Today's book is another biography. The title is Celia Cruz, Queen of Salsa. Remember that a biography is the story of a person's life written by someone else. So Veronica Chambers wrote this biography and Julie Marin illustrated it. So what do you notice about the front cover? This lady is Celia Cruz. She's singing a kind of music called salsa. Why do you think they called her the Queen of Salsa? Look at the last few pages of this book. What do you think about the years written on the photographs? 1975, 1987, 2001, 2002. So what do you think the years written on the photographs tell you? Let's read to find out about Celia Cruz's life. Okay. And there's more pictures here. 1950, 1962, 1960, 1965. Celia Cruz, Queen of Salsa. In the fabled land of Havana, where rhythm grows sweet and juicy, like oranges in Florida, there lived a girl. She looked like a girl and talked like a girl, but everyone who ever met her agreed she sang like a bird. What are some of the things that you have already learned about Celia Cruz, just from reading the first page? When Celia Cruz was growing up in Cuba, she could never hear the magic others claimed was in her voice. When she opened up her mouth to sing, she heard a girl like any other, but when she sang, her father heard thunder. Her cousins heard the call of the sea. Her neighbors heard a hummingbird. Celia would grow up to be a queen, but she was not born a princess. She grew up in a poor section of town, one of 4 sisters, though the house was also home to numerous cousins. At times there were as many as 14 children in the 2-bedroom house. Still, young Celia always stood out amongst the crowd. Her mother liked to tell the story of how a tourist bought Celia's first pair of shoes after hearing the little girl sing. Like other girls in Havana, she had chores. Some of her friends were charged with sweeping the kitchen. Other girls washed the dinner plates. Celia's job was to sing lullabies to put her younger brothers and sisters to sleep. At night, her voice carried through the windows, rolling along the cobblestone streets like a wheel or a wish. The people in her neighborhood began to gather outside of her family's front door, begging her father to leave it open. They said, "Her voice is tan dulce, sweet like azúcar." Her voice, it was said, sent you not only to sleep, but to a nighttime land of angel dreams. Always shy and more than a little independent, Celia mistook the gathering crowds for busybodies, watching her every move. "Ay, por favor," she pleaded. "If you don't leave, these little ones will never get to sleep." Look at the people. What happens when Celia sings? And what do you think busybody means? Busybody means people who are just hanging around with nothing to do, just in the way. Despite her initial shyness, she could not stop singing. In the afternoon, after school, she would listen to the rapid-fire calls and cries of the Paragon, the street vendors calling out their wares. In time, Celia would recognize the passionate and pulsating cries of the Paragon and Celia's unique vocal style. Interesting. So she took how these people called out their wares, or what they were selling, and she used that in her music. In high school, she began singing in school shows and local clubs. The music that she loved, el son and la guaracha, blended traditional Afro-Cuban rhythms with the flavor and the folklore of the tropics. It was the kind of music that sizzled from the joy of being alive. Her father loved to watch his little songbird, watch her send 100 hearts soaring with her melodies. But he was also cautious. "Keep studying, mija," he told her as she hummed old Cuban love songs, while absent-mindedly flipping the pages of her school books. "You are so smart. Forget about singing. Become a school teacher and make our family proud." So notice how Celia's father looks at her while she is singing. How do you think he feels about Celia singing? It says that Celia's father was cautious. What does it mean to be cautious? What could be risky about being a singer? Her teachers, however, saw things a different way. "Take a chance," one professor told her. "With your voice, you could earn in a day what it makes me a year to make." But it is not easy to take a dream planted in your heart and make it grow in the world. Celia was unknown and did not have the kind of connections that easily open doors. Still, she jumped at every opportunity. Talent contests at the National Theater, amateur nights on the radio. She never forgot her father's lessons on the importance of education. And after graduating high school, she enrolled in Cuba's National Music Conservatory, where she studied piano, voice, and musical theory. Then, in 1950, she got her big shot. The most popular band of the day was a group called La Señora Matancera. They were auditioning for a new lead singer. When they heard Celia sing, the way she made each and every note swing, they decided to give the little songbird a job. At first, La Señora's public was outraged. Who was this no-name singer fronting their favorite band? The phones at the Havana radio stations rang off the hook with complaints. At home, Celia began to wonder if she shouldn't take her father's advice and teach school. Was she really the ruin of Cuba's most beloved band? She stood by the window, looking at the stars. She feared she would never join, and Celia asked herself, "Why do I sing? Is it for fame and fortune, and for fans that do not exist?" "No," she told herself. "I sing for my parents, the ancestors, and the saints. I sing because when I lift up my voice up high, I feel like the first pajero of the day, whistling buenos dias to anyone who will listen. I sing for my little brothers and sisters and the sweet expressions on their faces when they finally fall asleep." Although Celia was seriously thinking about giving up her dream, her bandmates refused to allow her to quit. As a group, they rewrote the history of Cuban music with new arrangements and a fresh, innovative style. By the time she left Cuba in 1960, Celia was as beloved throughout the country as the men who made music with her. She'd even earned an affectionate nickname from her thousands of fans. They called the group Café con Leche, coffee with milk, because Celia's skin was very dark and her bandmates were very fair. In the United States, she became a citizen, and her talent was rewarded with a permanent contract at the Hollywood Palladium. But once she left Cuba, politics dictated that she could never return. She would never again walk the streets of her beloved Havana. She would never again hear the cries of the pregón that were the bass and treble of Cuban street life. It was a heartache she carried her whole life through. So this is a sad and difficult time in Cuba. A new leader took over the Cuban government, and many people left the country, including Celia. And they couldn't go back. How would you feel if you could never go back to the country where you grew up? That would be really sad, right? It was a heartache she carried her whole life through. So what do you think heartache means? Heartache. Well, heartache is a compound word. Heartache. and so ache and heart. So that means her heart aches, which means it hurts sometimes. Still, she kept her heart open. Lost loves made room for new loves, and it was there in Hollywood, that factory town of movies and dreams, that the young princess of salsa fell in love with a knight in shining armor. His name was really Knight, Pedro Knight. He was the lead trumpet player of the Palladium Orchestra. While he dazzled her with his high notes, he won her love with his understanding. She told him that her heart would always be split in 3 pieces. Only one part would belong to him. One part of her heart belonged to music, and the third piece would always live in Cuba. Celia knew that she had met more than her husband. She had met an angel who would be her companion and protect her in this land so far from home. Celia Cruz brought salsa music to every corner of the earth, from London to the Congo, from Brazil to Japan. She recorded over 20 gold albums and is known the world over as the Queen of Salsa. For more than 40 years, Pedro Knight was her king. Celia's performance trademark was a full-throated shot of azúcar. It's the Spanish word for sugar, and the only word many say that so perfectly describes her voice. And you see in this picture, she's dropping sugar cubes because her voice is like sugar. In the fabled land of Havana, where the rhythm grows sweet and juicy like oranges in Florida, there lived a girl. She looked like a girl and talked like a girl. But everyone who ever met her agreed she sang like a bird. The bird grew into a princess, and the princess became a much beloved queen. Her kingdom was music, and those who loved her called her not by name, but by the joy she inspired. At concerts, they called out "Azúcar," and Celia Cruz never failed them. She sung sugar, sweet sugar, wherever she went. So, the author said she sang like sugar wherever she went. I wonder what that sounded like. How do you think it sounded when Celia sang like sugar? So I'm going to read the author's note here. It says, I was born in Panama, and as my mother likes to say, she gave me the milk. But the music of Celia Cruz sweetened it. When I grew up, Celia Cruz became a role model for me because she was a Latina, which means she was a black Cuban. She taught me that despite the common media images, Latinas come in all colors. As a journalist at Newsweek, I had the opportunity to interview Miss Cruz for a cover story about Latin music. Honestly, it wasn't my best interview. I was too in awe to ask many questions. Instead, I sat and listened, soaking in her beauty, her grace, the amazing rhythms of the voice that I'd heard so many times on records and CDs. Celia Cruz was born on October 21st in Santos Suarez area of Havana, Cuba. When she was 14 years old, Celia Cruz began singing in local talent shows. A classically trained musician who helped give life and spirit to Latin American dance music, she studied music theory, piano, and voice at Cuba's National Music Conservatory. She joined La Senora Matancera in 1950 and sang along with the group, recorded the songs that would become classics of Afro-Cuban music. These songs include Yempe La Roco, Burundaga, and Carmelo. By the end of that decade, the popularity of the group propelled Celia to international fame. On July 15th, 1960, she left Cuba and moved to the United States. In 1961, she became an American citizen, even though she dreamed her entire life of returning to Cuba and visiting her mother's grave. While Celia Cruz would eventually become known as the Queen of Salsa, she was a songstress who thrived on collaboration. Together with orchestra leader Tito Puente, she helped to ignite the salsa boom of the 1970s. But that was only the beginning of the way in which Celia Cruz would begin her passionate, joyful work as an ambassador of Afro-Cuban music. Her musical pairings transcended race, generation, and nationality. The artists she collaborated with range from salseros such as Fania All-Stars, Willie Colon, Gloria Estefan, Ray Barreto, to R&B legends Aretha Franklin, Patti LaBelle, to world music doyen David Byrne, to Haitian American hip-hop producer Wyclef Jean. She taught the world that salsa is more than music for Latinos. In it was contained la esencia de la vida, the joy, the pain, the bone and marrow, the very essence of life to which all people around the world could connect. In her life, Celia Cruz recorded more than 70 albums, many of which went gold or platinum. She won 5 Grammy Awards and appeared in 10 movies, including the critically acclaimed Mambo Kings. In Africa, she performed at the sold-out concert that was a prelude to the famous Rumble in the Jungle boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. She received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. October 25th was declared Celia Cruz Day in San Francisco. In Miami, a street is named Celia Cruz. On July 16, 2003, Celia Cruz passed away, and music lovers the world over mourned her death. She more than witnessed history. She transformed it from a revolution in Cuba to a revolution in Latin music. So let's talk about the different things in Celia Cruz's life she had to overcome so that she could become a singer known around the world. Think about how she initially grew up. Did she grow up rich? No, she sounds like she grew up poor, living in a 2-bedroom house with 14 children. Did she know anybody? Any famous people before she started being famous herself? Not particularly. Why do you think Veronica Chambers wrote this biography of Celia? What was important about Celia's life and what she did? A role model is someone you can look up to and respect. Think for a moment about why Celia Cruz would be a good role model.